you'll want to start a practice. These are things that I keep pretty much within arm's reach as I'm working on anything, and hopefully it'll help you in your calligraphy journey to get started. For practicing calligraphy, I'm into graph paper, layout paper, and a tracing paper. So this is a paper by John Neal Books, and it's got 8 squares per inch, and I like it. I like just practicing on already ruled graph paper. That way I don't have to worry about drawing guidelines. Or I'll work on layout bond. That it's a real smooth paper, but it's also transparent enough that you can see guidelines below it. This is just a regular piece of graph paper that I put underneath it. And what I like about this and this tracing paper is that it's real smooth, but it takes ink very well. So I can practice with a nib and ink on it, or just a pencil, or a calligraphy marker. I keep a little cup of paper clips on my calligraphy desk. If you can scrounge up just a couple from somewhere, this will help to keep all the practice and support pages attached to the guidelines page as you work. And that way you can move the entire setup as you write. So it would look like this. A white sheet on the bottom, your guidelines, just for the sake of demo, I just picked graph paper, and then this is a layout bond over the top. And then you would clip your pages all together, and that way, as you're writing, they stay all together. Okay, so writing instruments for practice. These may not be what you're expecting to see. I always recommend working with a pencil, a sharpened wooden pencil, before working with ink, because calligraphy is not only about like what we're writing with, but also how we're holding the tool and how we're controlling the movement of the entire hand and controlling the flow of ink to the paper. So a pencil helps us develop a lightness of touch with that, and also gets us to have our muscles remember how to move the arm, gets our eyes to see like where on the guidelines we're putting the letters. And then a mechanical pencil is what I use to rule guidelines, just because it's a consistent thickness and a thicker line. As your guidelines get thicker, it'll change the size of your calligraphy. And then as far as nibs go, I usually practice with a Hunt 22B or a Mitchell nib, though I also really enjoy the Zig calligraphy markers. This one's a dual-ended one. It has a small edge and then a larger broad edge too. And then you have your holders. So when I started calligraphy, this is a plastic holder, or pen staff is actually the proper name for it. This is a plastic pen staff from Speedball. It was about $1.50 at the art store, and you can see that there's a groove here where you would insert the back of the nib. And then I graduated to something a little more sophisticated. This is wooden, but there are 4 tines inside of this. So either the back of the nib can go here, or there's also a space between the tines and this metal rim here. So a nib can go in there. And I use a straight holder for both broad edge calligraphy and copper plate, point and pen calligraphy. I do have an oblique holder that I got in a workshop. And so it's the staff is similar to the Speedball. And then it has what's called a flange that comes off the side of it. And so the back of the nib would go here, and then you write with it, and it already turns the nib at an angle for you. So this nib was developed, or excuse me, this pen staff was developed specifically for Spencerian script, which is what I use it for. For practice, I usually reach for Sumi or walnut ink. You can get each pre-bottled near the colored pencil section of the art supply store. They're easy to work with, and they both leave a really beautiful finish. If you want to dilute your ink, try using an eyedropper or maybe a paintbrush to add just a little water at a time. You still want the ink to stay together, but sometimes these inks are just too thick to flow down the nib properly. It's also a good idea to keep your ink in a smaller container as you work with it for two reasons. One, if you spill it, you make a smaller mess. You can even put a tape roll on the bottom of your container and tape it to the desk for better luck with spilling, trust me. And then the second reason to keep ink in a tiny container is that you won't get too much ink on the nib. So this will help to keep your hands clean, because sometimes the ink will go up that pen staff, and then maybe you don't know that you have ink on your fingers and it gets on your page. And it just exponentially spreads from there, kind of like glitter. But it also, having too much ink on your nib will increase the chances of it dripping off your nib onto your paper or blobbing everywhere once you start writing. So it's really helpful to just work with it in small amounts at a time.